Hi, and welcome to College Planning Untangled, where we help simplify the college planning process for our families. I'm Kristin Clark. I'm here with Bobby Hood. Bobby, how are you doing today?
Just great. Excited to talk about college stuff. Like it's that week where everybody's just now getting started. I think college is right about to start up for so many people, and so it's,
Yeah,
it's
and the
that season.
flurry, the flurry of activity now for our seniors in high school, where they're having to
Mhm.
start really making those last decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's really time, to like fill out those applications if you haven't finished doing it. Everybody's working on it right now, right? And one of those things is that, college is going to ask you what you want to major in, and they're going to expect you to talk about that in your essays. And I think a lot of students haven't figured that out, right? And think,
They
oh, how am I supposed to figure that out?
they typically don't, Bobby. And what I hear is it's the most overwhelming part of planning for college from all of
Hmm.
my teen clients. And then they also tell me that it's the part that our counselors and our college consultants spend the least amount of time on with them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of confusion about just what are the steps. So we're going to take you through the steps today
Oh,
so that
great.
you know what you need to do to figure out a major. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's just go through it. So, yeah, what is the first thing students should start thinking about when they're trying to pick a major out?
Yeah. And I'm just going to stop and go back 1 second.
Hmm.
My true belief on this, Bobby, and I find it works with my clients, is not thinking about picking a major, but
Right.
starting out with thinking about a career path. So that's where we're going to focus our attention. Okay. And
That's great.
yeah, and I should probably say why, right?
Okay.
Because once you start thinking about what you want as the end result, the major
Mhm.
is easy to figure out.
Mm.
And with
Right.
all of my clients, once they've get an idea of what I call getting them into the pie shape, where they have an idea of what they want to do, a major is simple. There's usually 1 to 3 majors that make sense to get them to that goal.
Right. Yeah. And I remember, like just looking through the list of majors is very confusing, right? There's just so many, and you don't even know. A lot of high school students wouldn't even know what jobs come from some of those majors, right?
Bobby,
And
that's for sure. And you know what I equate it to? Have you ever eaten at the Cheesecake Factory?
yeah, absolutely.
And you have like this 80-page menu.
Hmm.
And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, just give me the meatloaf. I don't even
Hmm.
like meatloaf because I'm like,
Right.
oh my gosh, I just don't even, there's too many choices, right?
Hmm.
Same thing happens to these kids when they're picking a major is they're like, oh, you know what? I've never thought about being a marine biologist. Let's give it a shot, because
Yeah.
there's just all these choices. So where I like to start is this, and we are going back to the basics.
Yeah.
What do you like to do? What do you like to do when nobody else is
Hmm.
making you do anything? That's their interests. And it's so funny because a lot of times I hear that word passion thrown out and I'm like, "Oh gosh, I don't passion, that's such a big word, you know?"
Yeah.
And so I soften that with, "What do you love to do?" Just
Right.
things you like. Okay? Then we've got
Absolutely.
to yeah. And then once you've written down that entire list,
Mm.
include all the things. It's okay if it's food. It's okay if it's,
Right.
going out to the movies with your friends. It's you just name all the things,
Hmm.
okay? I'll as we're going along, I'm gonna tell you a story of Noah. So Noah loved golf, and
Hmm.
when we were talking about golf, telltale signs, Bobby, and this is for parents if you see your kid doing this. He leaned into the screen and he's like, "Kristin, I love everything about golf." And I was like, "But Noah, tell me more." His shoulders went up, he was leaning in, his face lit up, and you could tell in his eyes, like his smile was going into his eyes. And he said, "I love the restaurants, I love going into the pro shop, I love playing, obviously." And then he goes,
Hmm.
"I even love the smell of the grass, Kristin." But
Wow.
you saw that energy, right?
Mhm.
Watch your kids. They might not do that with you, but they'll do that with other people,
Mhm.
okay? So figure out what that interest is,
Yeah.
and you have to understand what your skills are, and that goes to school, it goes to anything. So for Noah, he wasn't a great golfer,
Mhm.
so it was like, "No, I just love being around the sport." He knew he wasn't gonna be a golfer, but he was really good with his hands, and he loved being outside,
Mhm.
and he was very creative, okay? The second piece is to look at your preferences.
Mhm.
And what I mean about this, Bobby, You probably have a lot of your students say this. They either want to stay really close to home or they want to get as
Right.
far away from mom and dad as they can.
Right.
Right? So if you're in a big city versus a small city, what appeals to you? Do you like working with old people? Do you hate kids? You
Mhm.
know, we can rule out a lot of stuff by looking at preferences.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, just working with people or working on your own is a big thing, right? Like figuring that out,
Mhm.
because that changes so many decisions. And like, even there are within the same career, there are people facing jobs and there are non people facing jobs, right? So that can be part of it as well, you know? And so, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a big one I always bring up with my clients, and that is this. How important is money to you?
Mhm.
And I will
Yeah.
tell you, there are typically only two answers to this.
Hmm.
One is I want to make a crap ton of money,
Right.
and they know that. And I'm like, don't be shy about it. If that's a
Yeah.
preference, you need to know that because you're going to make decisions based on that.
Hmm.
The second is, yes, I want to live a nice life, but it's not my driver. Okay.
Right.
And parents, I want you to understand these kids all get the fact that they've got to get out of your house and pay for
Hmm.
themselves.
Right.
Okay. So they're not confused by this. So
Yeah.
don't get too upset if some kids like, oh, money's not that important to me. What they
Mhm.
mean is, I want to live a nice life, but yeah,
Right.
it's not the biggest thing. Okay.
Yeah.
The third step, understanding your talents, which is one of
Okay.
my favorite parts. And I think you can ask a lot of people what they're talented at, and they do
Hmm.
have a flavor for it, right? They're like,
Hmm.
"Yes, I'm good with people. Yes, I like to build things, and I'm good at that." When my favorite assessment is the Clifton Strengths Assessment, which
Hmm.
helps people understand the activities that they do so well. It's like breathing for them,
Hmm.
and a lot of times they won't even realize it's a talent because they're like, well, everybody thinks this way. And the reality is they don't, that these are true talents that they bring to the table. That's really cool for them to dig into this. And you've taken this assessment.
Hmm. Yeah, and this is interesting too, because I mean, it sounds like it would be obvious, but I mean, it is the primary thing that I did wrong when I was in high school is I discounted the things I was talented at because they seemed too easy to me, and I ended up choosing college majors that were more difficult for me because I thought they were more challenging, and that the easy stuff didn't seem challenging and seemed silly. And so, like, I loved computer programming, and I was very talented at it, and then I didn't do that, and that doesn't necessarily mean that I should have been a computer programmer, but I should have certainly considered it more than I
Right.
did.
Well, and
You know.
you're bringing up a really interesting point because I think in people's minds, their
Hmm.
career and work's supposed to be hard.
Hmm.
Okay. That's Bobby's cat, by the way. It
Yeah,
is
that's my
not his
cat.
child. He's not a kid nor any baby. Um, Work doesn't have to be hard. I mean, the whole goal of this in my
Yeah,
book and what I try to help my clients with is you should love what you do. You do it 40 hours, 50, 60 hours a week. You might as well love it,
yeah,
right? So if it comes easy to you, why would you not want to do those things?
absolutely.
And that's what the talents piece is all about. It's like
Hmm.
do the stuff that you're good at. And guys, you know what? That stuff that's hard for you,
Yeah,
it's easy for somebody else.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't mess with that stuff. Lean into who you are. And that's really these first three steps are all about
Hmm.
understanding who you are, what you want, what you like. So then now you can make decisions based on that.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Last two steps.
Hmm.
Number 4, be confident about what you want. One of the tricks that I give my clients is this. I'm like, talk about it.
Hmm.
I've had, for some reason, a lot of clients lately that want to be a realtor
Okay,
at age, at a
that's
young
interesting.
age. We're talking 17, 18, 19 years old. Um, Talk about it, right?
Hmm.
Say it out loud, see how it feels coming out of your mouth. Gather facts. So, how many jobs are available? What can you make in that industry? What are there a bunch of jobs open locally for you? What are the things? How long does it take to get through schooling? If you're looking at this at something and it takes 10 years to go through school, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah,
So you got to decide
absolutely.
if you're willing to do that. So gather as many facts as you can. And here's the biggest one: talk to people doing that role.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I always give this example just because I think it's a really clean one to talk about. And I had a student that wanted to be a pilot. So when he talked to the pilot, he asked him things like, how often are you home for Christmas? Your wife's a nurse. How did you balance those two careers? What's it feel like to sit in a cockpit for 7 hours straight?
Right.
These things that only a pilot's going to know and be able to tell you what that life's truly like. Okay. I'm going to go back to Noah.
Yeah.
All right. So for Noah, he really, we talked about him being creative and working with his hands. Two of his talents, I'm going to give you those really quick and backtrack for a second. One was harmony, which people that are high in harmony are really good at getting people to get on the same wavelength, the same path, and to be able to move forward if they disagree. And you think about, so for Noah, I'm trying not to give away the big reveal on what he ended up doing. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll go to the next one. He was also really good at ideation, which was coming up with new ideas and loving to brainstorm, right? So I'm going to give the reveal now, because for Confident You, he was looking at landscape architecture. And he went out and he talked to a whole bunch of people that were doing residential, commercial, all these different things. And what he ended up figuring out is that he wanted to be a landscape architect building golf courses. So he kind of got a little bit of everything. And that's how the golf came into play and the interest. And I got to tell you, what's interesting about that is for him, it got him excited about something he had already been kind of playing with being outside the landscape architecture. Think about his harmony, where he is working with vendors, trying to work on timelines and making sure people are doing what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it, talking about negotiations, money. That's going to be a huge talent for him to use there.
Yeah.
And then I look at golf courses and I'm like, yep, every hole looks the same to me. Well, we know they're not.
Yeah.
And for him to have this plethora of ideas that he can come up with over, just all kinds of new things will serve him well on that too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's just, it makes complete sense. And it's like, how would you have come up with, how would a person come up with that idea? Right. And it's this thing you say, okay, these are the things you love to do and what you're talented at. And you put that together and someone's designing, someone's doing that, right? Someone is designing those golf courses and it's a complicated and hard job. And it's something that's the perfect job for him. Right. I mean, it's so perfect.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what's fun about it. You're right. It's like when I tell people these stories, they're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Right. But as you know, until it starts unfolding, it's harder to kind of get to. So you really have to try. And this is not a fast process. It's funny because parents are like, are they there yet? Are they there yet? And I'm like, hey guys, we're figuring out something that they may want to do for the rest of their life. So let's let them, take some time on this. Right.
Absolutely.
All right. The last step, getting confident about what you want. And I can't tell you how important this is for a kid, for them to feel like they have good ideas. So making sure that you let them brainstorm and talk and, kind of explain what they're thinking so that you can help them be confident about the things they're choosing. Okay. Because here's the kicker. Nobody else can figure this out but them.
Yep.
Nobody knows what's going to make them happy but them. Yeah. So I think that's a really hard part for parents too, is allowing that process to happen and not wanting to jump in and going, yeah, but, oh, geez, can you get a job in that?
Oh, yeah, right. You can shut down a student so easily by saying, oh, but I don't think there are any jobs at it, or you can't make any money doing that, or you won't be happy doing it, right? Just listen, right? And part of the thing too is this is the time of year where students are going to start stressing about writing their essays for college admissions. And they're like, I don't know what to write about, and they can't get an idea. Well, if they go through this process right now, if they work with you and talk about their majors, then the essays write themselves, right? Because then you just talk about how you discovered that idea, what you want to do, what you're going to do in college, why you want to go to that college so you can learn to do that career, right? So everything falls into place.
Right. And you think about what Noah could have written in an essay for that, right?
Gosh.
About just, the whole idea of smelling that grass. I walked on the golf course, I smelled the grass and I knew, blah, blah, blah. There's so much beauty in that, as well as being able to talk about their strengths and how they're going to use those, I think is huge. And, I've had essay writer people that help kids write essays. They're like, wow, when they know their strengths, is just so much, we've got so much to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And colleges, when they read the essays, what they want to see is the student's going to come and be successful and complete college and graduate, right? That's what they want to see. And so someone who's already knows their major and their career is far, far, far more likely to do that, right? And that's kind of part of this too, is that for parents, I mean, you want your student to get out and graduate from college and not change their major 3 times, because you do that nowadays, you're going to spend 6 years in college just trying to complete your major. So,
and the average
figure it out now.
The average is 5.5 years. And I don't think enough people know that, right?
Yep.
So here are those 5 steps again. So for anybody that is chiming in late, number 1, understand your interests and your skills.
Right.
Number 2, really get a hold of what those preferences are, far away from mom, old people, young people, money. What are those things that you have to have? And ruling out the things you know you don't want, because that's easier to do. And you can have a whole lot of list and get rid of a whole bunch of things. Understanding what your talents are and truly being able to explain those to people. Getting confident about these choices that you're making. So talking about it with friends and family, having them ask you questions so you can go, I didn't think of that. Let me look at that. Gathering the facts, figuring out how many jobs are there? How much schooling do I need? How hard is it to get into this? Are there jobs by me? Do I have to move? All that stuff. And then the key one is talking to those people that are already doing it.
Yep.
And lastly, trusting yourself and having confidence that you can make this decision for yourself. And it goes back to our theme, Bobby. You know, hard things are not that hard when you take them back to basics and you break it down into little pieces.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is great. And yeah, so students can always, feel free to contact us on my website. I'm always happy to talk to people. And I know, Kristin, you're constantly like running classes and doing one-on-one things for students who need to choose their major, figure out their strengths, right?
Yep. Yep. As you said, call us anytime. We were here to help, and we will get you the right resources if we're not that.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
See you next
Bobby.
week.